Good evening, my friends. Tonight, I am going to teach you the most important skill you will ever learn in manifestation. Not how to imagine, not how to visualize, not how to apply techniques. Tonight, you will learn how to live in the end, because here is the truth that most people never grasp. You can assume your desire perfectly. You can enter the state of the wish fulfilled beautifully. You can feel it vividly and deeply for a moment. But if you cannot remain there, if you fall out of the state an hour later, a day later, or a week later, your desire will never harden into fact. The secret of manifestation is not entering the end. The secret is staying in the end. Tonight, you will learn exactly how this works. You will learn how to remain faithful to your assumption when circumstances contradict it. You will learn how to deepen your certainty when doubt appears. You will learn how to live from the end so naturally, so completely, that nothing can pull you out of it. Are you ready to become unshakable? Then let us begin. First, let me show you the pattern that quietly destroys most manifestations before they ever appear. Notice how the body responds when something is truly settled. There is no urgency, no negotiation, no mental rehearsal. The shoulders soften, the breath slows, the mind grows economical. This physiological peace is not a reward, it is a signal. The nervous system recognizes completion. Science now mirrors this ancient truth. The brain reorganizes itself around perceived reality. What you repeatedly accept as true becomes the baseline from which perception operates. This is not belief as hope, it is belief as identity. And identity is what the world responds to. When Christ said, "It is done unto you as you believe," he was not describing a moral outcome. He was revealing an internal law. Belief here is not opinion, it is occupancy. Living in the end requires that you stop asking when. Time is not a cause. Time is a delay in reflection. If you ask when, you are not living in the end, you are living in anticipation. Anticipation keeps desire alive, but fulfillment distant. The end has no anticipation. The end has memory. It feels like recognition. Ask yourself gently, if this were already resolved, how would I move through this hour? How would I speak to myself? What would I stop explaining? Then do not answer with words. Answer by becoming still. This stillness is not passivity. It is alignment without resistance. It is faith without strain. It is the Sabbath spoken of in Scripture, not a day but a state. And God rested. Not because creation was tiring, but because it was finished. To live in the end is to rest where the outcome is settled. The greatest obstacle to this way of being is not doubt, it is habit. Habit pulls you back into reaction. Habit invites you to consult appearances. Habit encourages you to rehearse problems. And every rehearsal strengthens the old state. So the work is not to fight habit, but to interrupt it. When circumstances appear that contradict your assumption, you do nothing. You do not affirm against them. You do not argue. You do not explain. You simply refuse to move. You remain where you decided to be. This refusal is not denial. It is sovereignty. The senses are reporters, not judges. They report past assumptions, not future truths. To react to them emotionally is to consent to the past continuing. To remain calm in their presence is to declare independence from old causes. This is why so many people enter the state beautifully and then fall out of it hours later. They imagine correctly, then live incorrectly. They feel the end, then resume the identity of waiting. And the law, exact and impersonal, reflects the dominant state. Living in the end means you no longer visit fulfillment. You reside there. Residence is revealed not in imagination, but in behavior, in how quickly you return to peace, in how little reassurance you require, in how calmly you respond to delay. These are not virtues, they are indicators. The end is calm. Excitement belongs to anticipation. Calm belongs to possession. This is why forced positivity feels exhausting. It is the energy of someone trying to arrive. Living in the end feels simpler, fewer thoughts, less commentary, reduced urgency. The mind becomes quieter because it has nothing left to solve. When the mind quiets, intuition emerges, not as voice, but as clarity. Decisions feel obvious. Timing feels natural. Action arises without pressure. You do not act to make something happen. You act because it makes sense from who you are. This is the difference between effort and alignment. Consider how you behave when something is already decided. You do not monitor it. You do not defend it. You do not repeatedly reassure yourself. You trust it. And trust is not emotional. It is positional. Living in the end is positional faith. Scripture again is precise. What things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye have received them. Have received, not will receive. Prayer here is not asking, it is assuming. It is agreement with the end. Agreement is the creative act. When you agree inwardly, the body follows. When the body follows, the world reorganizes. This reorganization may appear slow, but it is thorough. Life does not rush, but it does not forget. During this interval, your only responsibility is non-interference. Interference looks like checking. Interference looks like worrying. Interference looks like explaining delay to yourself. Let the seed work. A seed does not require encouragement. It requires consistency of environment. Your inner environment is shaped by attention. Where you place attention is where energy flows. What you withdraw attention from loses momentum. So withdraw attention from what contradicts your state, not angrily, not dramatically. Simply do not engage. Silence is not weakness, it is authority. When fear speaks, remain. When doubt whispers, remain. When impatience appears, remain. Remaining is the discipline. This is how you change yourself, not by fixing flaws, but by stabilizing state. The self you were dissolves naturally when the state is no longer reinforced. You do not fight the old self, you starve it of attention. And as the old self fades, a gentler character emerges. You become less reactive, less defensive, less urgent. Compassion increases not because you are trying to be better, but because inner conflict has ended. This is how you live more positively, not by optimism, but by orientation. You face inward first. You establish peace before productivity. You choose being before doing. The world responds to this without announcement. People treat you differently. Situations soften. Opportunities align. Not magically, but lawfully. You begin to notice that what once felt heavy no longer weighs as much. Problems lose emotional charge. Solutions appear while you are not searching. This is not coincidence, it is coherence. Coherence between belief and behavior, coherence between feeling and identity, coherence between the end and the now. When coherence is present, manifestation is inevitable. Living in the end also refines desire itself. Desires become quieter, more precise. They no longer arise from lack, but from expression. You do not want things to fix you, you want them to reveal you. And this is the final refinement. When the end feels ordinary, it is near. When it feels natural, it is active. When you forget to worry about it, it is already unfolding. So do not measure progress by speed. Measure it by peace. Peace is the indicator that the state is occupied. Peace is the sign that resistance has ended. If peace is present, the end is alive. Now, gently, let this understanding settle not as thought, but as posture. Let it inform how you sit, how you breathe, how you move through the next hour. Let it simplify you. There is nothing to chase, nothing to repeat, nothing to force. Living in the end is not dramatic. It is dignified. You rise each day, not asking what will happen, but knowing that what aligns will reveal itself. You act when action feels natural. You wait when waiting feels calm. You trust the sequence because you trust the state. And when the world finally mirrors what you have long inhabited, it will not surprise you. It will feel familiar, almost obvious, because you lived there first. So remain faithful, not emotionally, but positionally. Remain loyal, not to desire, but to identity. Remain still, not inactive, but settled. This is the real secret. The end was never ahead of you. It was always within you, waiting to be occupied. Be still now. It is done. Most people follow the same pattern, and they never realize why their results fade. They discover the law. They feel inspired. They imagine clearly. They enter the state of the wish fulfilled with precision and emotion. And for a brief moment, everything feels aligned. Then they return to their day. They check circumstances. They listen to old conversations. They react to familiar problems. And without noticing, They step back into the identity they were trying to leave. Nothing dramatic happens. No failure announces itself. They simply stop being the one who has. And the law responds instantly, not to their imagination, but to their return. This is where most manifestations dissolve, because manifestation is not sustained by imagination. It is sustained by identity. You do not get what you imagine once. You experience what you consistently live from. This is why entering the state is easy for many people, but remaining there feels difficult. Remaining requires a new relationship with circumstances. It requires that you stop allowing appearances to dictate who you are. Circumstances are not causes. They are reflections. They reflect the state you were in, not the state you are choosing now. But if you react to them emotionally, you give them authority. You allow the past to reclaim the present. Living in the end means you refuse that authority. When something appears that contradicts your assumption, you do not fight it. You do not affirm against it. You do not analyze it. You simply remain where you have decided to be. This remaining is the discipline. It is not effort. It is loyalty. Loyalty to the state you chose when you imagined the end. Loyalty to the identity you occupied in that moment of fulfillment. Loyalty to the calm knowing that the end is already established inwardly. Scripture calls this faith. Not belief as opinion, but belief as position. Stand fast, therefore. Faith stands. It does not chase. It does not argue. It does not retreat. To live in the end, you must stop asking whether it is working. That question belongs to someone who is still waiting. The one who lives in the end does not monitor progress. Progress is irrelevant when completion is assumed. Instead, you begin to notice subtler things. You notice how quickly you return to peace. You notice how little reassurance you require. You notice how naturally you respond instead of react. These are signs of residence. When the end is occupied, urgency dissolves. The mind grows quieter. The body relaxes. The nervous system stops scanning for threat or confirmation. This calm is not passive. It is evidence that the state has stabilized. Science confirms what Scripture revealed long ago. The brain reorganizes itself around assumed reality. What you accept as true becomes the lens through which perception operates. And perception governs behavior. Behavior invites circumstance. So when the end is assumed, action flows differently. You do not act to make something happen. You act because it feels natural for who you now are. There is no strain behind movement, no desperation behind decision. This is alignment. Alignment is why some people seem to manifest effortlessly. They are not doing less, they are interfering less. They are not forcing outcomes, they are allowing coherence to express itself. Living in the end also requires that you stop explaining your life to yourself. Explanation keeps you anchored to the old state. You justify delay. You narrate struggle. You rehearse limitation. And every explanation is a reinforcement. The end needs no explanation. When something is settled, you do not discuss it inwardly. You trust it. And trust is not emotional. It is behavioral. You live as though it is so. This does not mean you deny reality. It means you reassign meaning. An obstacle is no longer opposition. It is reorganization. A delay is no longer failure, it is adjustment. A contradiction is no longer threat, it is residue. Residue from a former state. Living in the end means you treat appearances as temporary echoes, not permanent verdicts. You let them pass without engagement. And because you do not engage, they lose momentum. Attention is creative energy. What you feed persists. What you ignore dissolves. So you learn to place attention deliberately, not on what frightens you, not on what pressures you, but on the quiet knowing of completion. This knowing does not shout. It does not persuade. It does not repeat itself. It rests. And as you rest, something remarkable happens. Life begins to cooperate, not because you demand it, but because you are no longer resisting it inwardly. People respond differently. Situations soften. Opportunities arise without effort. And when results appear, they do not shock you. They feel familiar, almost inevitable, because you live there first. So continue. Continue to remain when the mind wants to wander. Continue to stay when the senses invite reaction. Continue to live from the end when nothing seems to move. This is not passive waiting. This is active identity. And identity, once stabilized, must express itself. The world has no choice. Stay here. The rest is already unfolding. At some point, you will notice a quiet shift in how you experience effort. Things that once required mental energy no longer do. You stop reminding yourself to believe. You stop correcting your thoughts every few minutes. You stop scanning your inner world for alignment. Alignment has become your default. This is the moment when living in the end stops feeling like a practice and starts feeling like a position. You are no longer maintaining a state, you are standing in it. And standing requires far less energy than striving. This is why those who truly live in the end appear composed, even understated. There is nothing theatrical about certainty. There is nothing loud about faith that is settled. The deepest convictions move quietly. Scripture describes this as meekness, not weakness, but power under control. The meek do not force outcomes. They inherit them. When you live in the end, you no longer feel compelled to rush life. You stop trying to compress time. You understand that time does not delay manifestation, it only reveals it. What has been accepted inwardly must express outwardly, but expression follows order. Order cannot be rushed. This understanding frees you from impatience. Impatience is not a flaw. It is simply the sign that attention has drifted back to the senses. When impatience appears, you do not scold yourself. You return to the end, return to the identity, return to the quiet knowing. Returning is the only movement required. Over time, you will notice that even your memories change. Events that once felt heavy lose their emotional charge. Old disappointments no longer define you. The past loosens its grip because you are no longer reinforcing it with attention. You are not erasing the past. You are outgrowing it. And as the past fades, the future stops demanding attention. You are no longer living forward or backward. You are living from the end, from completion, from a place where the question has already been answered. This is why anxiety diminishes. Anxiety belongs to someone who believes outcomes are uncertain. The one who lives in the end does not speculate about outcomes, they expect alignment. Expectation here is not hope, it is orientation. You move through the day oriented toward fulfillment. You make decisions from stability. You respond from composure. Even when challenges arise, they do not shake you because they do not redefine you. You have learned the difference between what happens and who you are. This distinction is liberation. Many people believe becoming a better person requires effort, discipline, and self-correction. But real transformation occurs when inner conflict ends. When you stop arguing with yourself, energy that was once spent on resistance becomes available for growth. Living in the end makes you gentler, not weaker, but clearer. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer need to defend your path. You no longer need to compare your timing to anyone else's. Comparison dissolves when identity stabilizes. You trust your own unfolding. You recognize that your life is not late. It is precise. Every delay has been alignment in progress. Every detour has been preparation. This recognition changes how you treat yourself. Compassion replaces pressure. Patience replaces judgment. And from this kindness, a better version of you emerges naturally, not forced, not constructed, revealed. You begin to live more positively, not because you are trying to be optimistic, but because negativity no longer has leverage. It has nothing to attach to. It passes through without staying. This is emotional maturity. You feel without drowning. You care without clinging. You engage without losing center. And as your inner world becomes more ordered, the outer world reflects that order. Not perfectly, not instantly, but faithfully. Life mirrors coherence whenever it finds it. So you stop asking whether you are doing enough. You stop asking whether you believe enough. You stop asking whether it will work. Those questions belong to someone who is still standing in the middle. You have moved to the end. From here, the path unfolds backward with ease. Actions suggest themselves. Opportunities align with your state. You say yes and no with clarity. You rest when rest is needed. You move when movement is natural. Nothing feels forced. This is the rhythm of alignment. And now, notice how little you need to hold on to, how few thoughts you must manage, how simple faith becomes when it is no longer mixed with effort. This simplicity is not naivete. It is wisdom. Wisdom knows that the deepest laws are the quietest ones. They do not demand attention. They require agreement. You have agreed. So remain. Remain when the world is loud. Remain when the picture has not yet changed. Remain when old habits invite you back. You do not need to resist them. You simply do not follow. Because you know where you live now. You live in the end. And from the end, everything else finds its place. And as you remain in this position, something subtle but decisive takes place. Your relationship with uncertainty dissolves. Uncertainty once felt like a threat. It demanded answers. It pressured you to predict, to control, to anticipate. But now, uncertainty no longer unsettles you because you are no longer asking it to define your state. You understand something fundamental now. Clarity does not come from knowing what will happen. Clarity comes from knowing who you are being regardless of what happens. This realization brings a new kind of confidence. Not bravado, not certainty about details, but confidence rooted in orientation. You know where you stand, even if the path ahead is not yet visible. Scripture speaks to this with quiet precision. We walk by faith, not by sight. This is not blindness. This is hierarchy. Sight reports, faith decides. Living in the end means sight no longer outranks faith. You still see what is happening. You simply do not kneel to it. And because you no longer kneel, fear loses its voice. Fear requires belief in external authority. It feeds on the idea that something outside of you has the final word. But once you know the end is chosen inwardly, fear has nowhere to attach. So fear passes through you without lodging. Doubt visits without staying. Thoughts arise without command. You are no longer ruled by inner weather. This is what it means to awaken, not to escape experience, but to stop being governed by it. Awakening is not an event. It is a relocation of authority. The center moves from the outer world to the inner state. From this center, you begin to live differently. You listen more than you speak. You pause more than you react. You respond from clarity rather than urgency. And others notice not because you announce it, but because your presence carries weight, not heaviness, gravity. The gravity of someone who is no longer seeking footing. This groundedness makes you a better person without effort. You are kinder because you are less defensive. You are patient because you are no longer rushing life. You are honest because you are not trying to impress or convince. Integrity emerges naturally. When identity is settled, you no longer betray yourself to gain approval. You no longer abandon your state to accommodate pressure. You no longer compromise inner alignment for outer comfort. This is not rigidity. It is coherence. And coherence is what allows life to flow through you unobstructed. You may still face decisions. You may still encounter obstacles. But now they arrive differently. They do not demand your worth. They do not threaten your peace. They simply ask for response. And response comes easily when reaction has ended. This is how manifestation accelerates without strain. Not because you push harder, but because resistance has been removed. The current was always there. You simply stop swimming against it. Living in the end aligns you with that current. So you begin to trust life not blindly, but intelligently. You see patterns. You recognize how often things resolve once you stop interfering. You notice how solutions appear when you are calm enough to receive them. This trust grows quietly. It does not need reinforcement. It does not require constant attention. It becomes background certainty. And from background certainty, foreground experiences reorganize. You will find that your days feel less cluttered, less emotionally noisy, less burdened by unnecessary thought. The mind becomes a servant again, not a master. It assists rather than dominates. Assistance feels light. Domination feels heavy. You have released the weight, so when the future calls for your attention, you answer calmly. When the past tries to speak, you listen without attachment. You are not pulled forward or backward. You are anchored in the end. From this anchoring, life unfolds with surprising grace. Not perfection, but coherence. Not absence of challenge, but presence of meaning. Not control, but flow. And you realize something that once felt elusive. You were never meant to manage reality. You were meant to embody a state. Everything else follows. So continue not by effort, but by fidelity. fidelity to the identity you have chosen, fidelity to the end you have accepted. When old habits return, greet them kindly and remain. When appearances challenge you, stay. When nothing seems to move, rest. You are not waiting. You are living from the place where waiting has ended. And from here, the world has only one option left: to reflect you. And now, notice what has quietly fallen away. The tension that once followed desire, the urgency that once accompanied waiting, the constant inner checking that once drained you, they are no longer necessary, because living in the end has rearranged the order of your life. You no longer begin from uncertainty and move toward peace. You begin from peace, and everything else reorganizes itself around it. This is the inversion most never experience. They believe peace comes after manifestation. But peace is the cause, not the reward. When peace is present, the state is occupied. When the state is occupied, the outcome is inevitable. This is why Scripture speaks so often of peace as power. The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds. Peace keeps. Peace stabilizes. Peace guards the state from intrusion. Living in the end means you are kept from unnecessary reaction, kept from emotional excess, kept from the need to defend or explain. You begin to trust the unfolding without monitoring it. Trust not because you are naive, but because you have seen the pattern. You have seen how every time you truly settled inwardly, life followed. You have seen how every time you stopped interfering, alignment occurred. You have seen how the moment you release control, things moved. This seeing is wisdom. Wisdom does not rush. Wisdom does not shout. Wisdom remains. And as wisdom deepens, your imagination refines. You no longer imagine from longing, you imagine from recognition. Imagination becomes a gentle touch, not a labor. A quiet confirmation, not a desperate reach. You may still enter imaginal scenes, but they feel different now. They are shorter, softer, almost unnecessary, because the state is already alive in you. You are no longer constructing reality. You are confirming it. This is the mark of someone who lives in the end. And from here, the way you treat others changes. You stop trying to extract validation. You stop needing agreement. You stop measuring yourself against external response. You give freely, not because you must, but because you are not empty. You listen deeply, not because you are uncertain, but because you are present. You forgive easily, not because you forget, but because you are no longer bound. Boundaries become clearer. Choices become cleaner. Life simplifies itself. This simplicity is not reduction, it is refinement. Only what aligns remains relevant. And as irrelevant concerns fall away, something sacred opens within you. Gratitude without effort. Not gratitude forced by discipline, but gratitude that arises naturally from fullness. Not thank you for what you hope to receive, but quiet appreciation for what is already assumed. This gratitude is not emotional excitement. It is recognition. Recognition that you are no longer becoming, you are being. Recognition that you are no longer reaching, you are standing. Recognition that you are no longer searching, you have arrived inwardly. And when arrival is real, life mirrors it faithfully. You may not know the exact route circumstances will take. You may not predict the sequence. But sequence no longer concerns you. Outcomes no longer feel fragile. Fragility dissolves when the center is stable. So when life surprises you, as it will, you meet it with openness, not fear. When plans change, you adapt without collapse. When things take longer than expected, you remain composed, because time is no longer your adversary. It is simply the stage on which alignment becomes visible. Living in the end teaches you patience that does not feel like waiting. It feels like trust in motion, like knowing the seed is alive beneath the soil. You do not dig it up. You do not check it daily. You let it grow. And it grows best when left undisturbed. So remain undisturbed inwardly. Let the world rearrange itself at its own pace. Let people adjust in their own time. Let circumstances catch up to the state you already occupy. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where coherence requires you to be. This knowing settles you even more deeply. And from this depth, the final truth becomes clear, not as an idea, but as lived reality. You were never meant to chase the end. You were meant to live from it. Everything else was practice. Now, The practice has become position. Remain there. And now, there is nowhere else to go. Nothing left to figure out. Nothing left to correct. Nothing left to wait for. You are standing where the answer has always been. The mind is quiet, not because it is forced into silence, but because it recognizes completion. The heart is steady, not because life is perfect, but because identity is no longer in question. You are no longer looking ahead for permission to feel whole. Wholeness is the ground beneath you. Let the outer world move at its own pace. Let circumstances arrange themselves in their proper order. Let time reveal what has already been accepted within. You do not follow events anymore. Events follow you. You do not chase outcomes. Outcomes arise naturally. From this place, life feels cooperative, not dramatic, not urgent, but faithful. Things arrive without announcement. Answers appear without struggle. What once felt distant now feels inevitable. And when it comes, you will not be surprised. You will recognize it, because you have lived here first. So rest now, not in sleep, but in knowing. Rest in the certainty that nothing is missing. Rest in the calm authority of one who has chosen their state and remained faithful to it. If tomorrow invites reaction, pause and remain. If the world calls loudly, answer quietly. If the old story tries to return, let it pass. You are no longer there. You live in the end. You stand in completion. You move from fulfillment. Be still. There is nothing left to do. It is finished.